got tools in hand, balsa wood we make a stand, carving dreams from days gone by, stunt hangar planes that touch the sky, control lines tight, the engine hums, crafting art where passion drums. Stunt hangar, flying high, old world craft beneath the sky, balsa wings we build with care. Stunt hangar, join us there.
I'm Tom Dixon. What I want to do today is follow up with a video that I did about a year and a half ago on foam wings. I want to answer a lot of the main questions that people have had since then. They've contacted me after seeing the video, or they've contacted me at various contests and so forth. And I thought that it would be better just to go straight forward with some of the answering the questions, and maybe that'll fill in some blank spots for people. And the techniques that I use here are exactly what I do. I'm going to be putting a wing together, I'm going to be putting the controls in it, I'm going to be putting the reinforcing tape around it, because this is a customer airplane that I'm going to be working on. And before we get completely started, before I did this piece of 2-inch wide glass tape shows up good against the shirt. I briefly sprayed this very lightly with some rattle can lacquer, and I'll show you why later. But normally I would do this along the way when I'm working, but I didn't want to spray it down here and have Joe get it all over the camera or up his nose or whatever. So you'll see why later. Now, first thing, control system people ask about. How do I put controls in a foam wing? Because most people who are modelers grew up bolting the Bellcrank on an 1/8-inch piece of plywood between two balsa ribs. And they've seen it in kit after kit after kit after kit. So it's hard to get your mind around, how do you do it on a foam wing? There's nothing to anchor to. Well, the standard way to do it is you put it on a mount that goes through the wing top and bottom, and I'll illustrate this, of course, in a few moments. And then basically you're attaching it to the outside of the wing where the wing is the strongest, and the center section where it's reinforced with fiberglass tape and epoxy, and that in turn joins the fuselage, so you've got a very strong Bellcrank mount. But to back up a couple of steps, I want to show you what I do with the Bellcrank, and I'm going to be working right here. So, what I've got here, and you might want to go to close-up of this stuff here, I've got a piece of 5/32 brass tubing, 1/8-inch ID, and a Bellcrank. This is a 3-inch Brodak Bellcrank, at which I don't use the small ones anymore, so I'm just going to use this as a demonstration. And this is the plastic button that, of course, it comes with it. Then you put a bolt through the Bellcrank, and it's supposed to pivot on the button. But the problem with this is it'll wobble like this. There's too much free play in it. And since we're mounting it without using a bolt, we need something else to mount all this to anyway. So probably 25 years ago I came up with a trick that I think works very well, and that's to take this piece of tubing and the button that comes with it. The trick here is to get it right in your fingers so it gets centered in this little vise. Normally I use the bench vise, and you have to start slowly and kind of guide it, and then you squeeze it in the button. And that, once it gets started, it'll self-guide. Now this little vise, the handle's so short, so it's a little bit hard to do. You squeeze it until it bottoms out. But the magic occurs after you do that, because then it takes that button, which was formerly a sloppy fit, and makes it a very tight press fit. Might not even go in from that side. And all I'm going to do is just press down on the table and try to pop it in there if I can. Yep. Now, it's part way in. I take the thin CA, just put a couple of drops in it. Press it the rest of the way in. And I'm going to hit it with the kicker to make sure the glue goes off. And now, I'm going to clean up the tubing a little bit with the drill. Normally I would take the Dremel and cut off the excess tubing here. And now, if all has gone well, we put it on this piece of 1/8" wire. If I haven't glued it together. And you may have to work it on the wire because you have to break in the interface between the brass tubing and the wire. But you get the idea that now you've taken all the play out of it. It can't wobble. You put a washer on top, a washer on the bottom, and a wheel collar either side. This is the actual bell crank that's going in the airplane, which is a 4" Brodak. As you can see, it's got the washer, wheel collar either side mounted on a piece of 1/8" wire, and it's as free as it can be. I'm twirling the wire without moving the bell crank there. And the lead outs here are Sullivan CD cable lead outs, and I've got those in a package over here. That's these, complete with the price. Do not use the crimps that come with it. I use these that Brodak calls thimble sets. I do not use the eyelets, I just use the little copper sleeves. And that's what the lead outs here are done. They're squeezed together with a copper sleeve. Again, I squeeze them with bench vise. You can use vice grip pliers. And then a drop of solder, acid core solder with flux on it, is run around the tubing, and it'll actually go back through the crimped area and solder the cable inside. The solder itself stiffens the cable here, so no eyelet is needed in here, and it will not keeps the wear from happening where one strand at a time is worn out on the cable. But this is the actual lead outs that are going in the airplane here. Now the next step, this is the stuff. Now we've got to show how to do it. The push rod, and this is typical. Started out looking at the plans here, and I measured the push rod originally at 6 7/8 inches from right here to here with a vertical line to the flap horn. I had to modify the push rod. I made the push rod a little too long, so I had to modify where I was putting it in the wing, hence the marks on the wing there. Now, the push rod we will go ahead and put in the bell crank. This is a carbon sleeve that's on top of the wire. It comes from an outfit called Goodwin's in Washington State. They're a kite supplier. So you can get most anything for kites there. If my hands are shaking, it's not because I'm nervous, it's because I'm old. We're just using a normal wheel collar to put the push rod in the bell crank. Now we need to make a notch in the wing. Grab a knife here. This is the inboard panel marked with an eye. So we make our notch here. And we're going to have to cut away some foam for the bell crank to swing. I've talked about doing this before, but I haven't actually shown doing it, so thought maybe somebody would benefit from the actual process being shown. It's a simple process, just cut the foam away to clear the bell crank. More than one person has cut away the foam on the inboard side of the wing and install the controls. I'm doing this with this round sander, so give more room for the bell crank to swing. More than one person's put the wing together and forgot to make clearance in the outboard wing. So before I forget that, we're going to go to the outboard wing and do it. And add a little notch there too, just to be sure we got clearance on the other side. Now we need to make a slot for the push rod, which will go that way, somewhere along in there. I did not mark this in advance. If your slot's too big, you can always add wood back later to fill it up. Usually I go ahead and cut and then I'll add another piece here. But it doesn't really matter because that's going to be inside the fuselage anyway. These permagrit sanders are very handy for making shapes in wood or foam or anything else. I got these, I think, from Aircraft Spruce, but they're probably available from a variety of sources. We'll let the lead outs hang out there for now. And I need to cut a little more because the horn's going to be offset since this is a profile. It'll be on the inboard side. So we're going to sand away a little more for that. The Bellcrank is mounted in here in what some people call backwards, but it was called that way originally back in the late 60s. Al Raid first did this with the idea that somehow that helped the airplane in certain maneuvers, that the pressure on one line or the other helped offset some of the yawing of the airplane. I don't do it for that reason at all. I do it simply because when I glue the wing together, the push rod and the lead outs are out of the way. Somehow that didn't go all the way through down there. Get something and hook that in there. The end of the wing has already got tiplets on it, or riblets on it, for mounting the tip. I'll get back to that toward the end of this video. So now we've got everything in here. It clears enough. Time to glue it all in place. Plain old 5-minute epoxy. I kept the tubes lying down like this because it's much quicker to get the stuff out when it's time to pour it. Don't need a lot for this particular part of it because we're going to have to put it together and then let this dry before we put the wing halves together. It's just an 1/8" balsa stick I'm using so I can control where I put the epoxy, which goes right in the slot. This is not done as the major hole for the Bellcrank. It's done just to keep it in place till the next operation. But while I'm doing this, I always turn the wire, put a little bit of epoxy on the collar and on the set screw so it doesn't come loose. Never had one come loose, don't want it to happen. And then same thing on the collar that's on the push rod. We'll be joining the panels here in a second now that the glue's dried. Didn't want you all to just have to be watching glue dry. That's not very very interesting at all. One more thing to do before we join the panels, though, and that's to lubricate the joints. This is just a piece of wire and a can of motor oil, and then you just pick up a little bit and put it right on the pivots, and it'll creep down into the metal after a while, because and we do lead outs too, of course. I've never seen in any of the almost ready to fly kits that anybody sells anybody talk about lubricating the controls, which to me seems to be the most obvious thing you would do. Put that back out of the way so I don't kick it over. Now we're ready to put the two halves together. So time to make more epoxy. And I'm going to go to the bottom of this thing this time. Time to order some more glue too, it looks like. It's way more glue than I'm going to need, but always better to have too much and not than too little. Now I'm going to do this procedure, and maybe I can fill in the gaps while I'm waiting for it to dry with a little bit of explanation in a moment. Yeah, not all that complicated. Just take the glue, put it on the wing. I've already test fit the other panel to make sure it clears and so forth, so that the Bellcrank can swing and the lead out's clear. I apparently cannot talk and use the glue stick at the same time. All right, 45 it says over here, so we got about 5 minutes to go. This is a very complicated process. You simply hold the two panels together, put them on the floor. That's one reason I use cable lead outs. Put a straight pin in the end here once it gets lined up. Sorry to be hiding behind the wing, folks, but it's the only way I can do this. And the pins in there just keep it from turning. And I'll turn around this way. Basically what I'm trying to do is just hold the wing in place while it dries. Now I've pre-fitted the panels so that it's a straight line. I can look down the back. Now it's got a little bit of sweep forward in each wing, but I want the straight line all the way down here, because you can see a straight line in this orientation much easier than you can line up with a wing sitting on a table trying to make sure it's exactly even everywhere, no droop and no twist and no misalignment. It's a lot easier just to see that, and you're accomplishing the same purpose with a lot less time and trouble. If the panels are accurately matched up, it'll go together pretty well straight and stay that way. Foam is compressible, so sometimes what happens is in the process of sheeting, you'll see like right here it doesn't exactly match up. Doesn't matter. You can push that a little bit back in place and let the glue hold it, or sand it off when it sets. It really doesn't matter very much. What matters is the center line of each panel is lined with each other at the leading edge and trailing edge. At the speeds that we fly, as long as the major parts of the panel are lined up properly, it's not going to affect the way the airplane flies. Now, this procedure works for me. I've seen over and over and over people putting wings on a long table and shimming them back and forth. And I've never understood how you could shim foam, because every time you put the shim under the foam, it compresses more. So I don't see how you get any more accurate alignment than this. And I do keep checking just to make sure it's not creeping. And just literally hold it there. It works perfectly well. Simple. And you don't need, if you're working in an apartment somewhere, all you need is, countertop or a large breadboard or cutting board or something like that to do most of your work on. And here you don't need a table to put the wing together at all. It's great if you have minimum space, or if you have to set up to build, then take everything back down again. Some people build with a board on top of a bed. Obviously you need to do that to go to sleep at night. So get everything out of the way. So this works as well as anything else. And it's obviously very simple, but I have people say, it can't be that easy. Yeah, it's really that easy. It's really that simple.
Good.
One other thing I have people ask me over and over, which to me is obvious, but perhaps not to others, is if you notice I join these panels with plain 5-minute epoxy. I've had people ask time and time again, is 5-minute epoxy strong enough to join the two wing panels? And I say, well, yeah, I've never seen 5-minute epoxy that was not a good bit stronger than styrofoam or balsa wood. So there's no point in putting some super zoot adhesive on here to something that's going to break that is far weaker in the first place. The strength will come from the next operation that I'm going to do just as soon as this sets, which is putting the glass tape on it. And you do use a slower curing epoxy in that situation because you want it to penetrate the wood well and get a good bond between the glass and the wood, and the epoxy to go as deep in the wood as you can get it to go. The strength in any of these wings, even in a balsa wing, the foam or the ribs are there only to give shape to the skin. It's the skin of the wing that gives it its strength. Real airplane construction, once we move to all metal construction, that's the theory, is that the skin is load bearing, not the internal structure, except to a minimal amount. So, the glue is essentially set on the wing, and I put it over here to continue hardening for a second. I mentioned earlier, started with a piece of glass tape and sprayed it with the lacquer. Well, this is a profile model. You don't need 2 inches of tape sticking out either side of the wing and trying to hide it. So I sprayed the glass with the lacquer because it hardens it up just a tiny amount so that when you cut it, it doesn't fray to all get out. And it used to be really a problem trying to cut this down and get it looking halfway neat, until it dawned on me that I could put sizing on it, so to speak. I think I'll just use that piece to make it much easier to work with. I'm making just a tiny hole in the glass to cover the rod here, and I'll do one on the other side. This doesn't really affect the strength of it at all. This glass tape I get from Aircraft Spruce in a big roll. I think they use it in full-scale airplanes as a barrier between wing ribs and then a fabric covering that goes on top. There are probably other places you could certainly find it. It used to be you could find it easily in a hobby shop, but you can't find hobby shops anymore either. And I just stick it in place. You can see I don't know whether they'll show on the camera, but you can see where the center line is. I've put the glass tape on here and tacked it in place in the back with some CA just to keep it from moving. And this is just an acid brush. They call them epoxy brushes in the hobby store. You can get them anywhere. One of the things I forgot to mention before joining the wings together is another advantage in doing it with the wing standing up instead of on a table with under the cradles, is you avoid the problem of the epoxy possibly dripping onto the Bellcrank. I'll heat it just so it'll penetrate more. Quite obviously, the wing has to be suspended over something else and let keep the glue from dripping into it. The push rod here has got glue on it. It doesn't matter because you're going to cut away that piece of glass tape when it cures anyway. Let's see if I can minimize that a little bit. The other major question I get from everybody all the time is, how do you finish a foam wing? Won't dope and so forth sink through the wood and mess up the foam? No, it doesn't. In fact, even if the wing's covered only with 1/32 wood, the dope does not penetrate it far enough to harm the foam. So you finish it just like any other airframe that you would with a silk span or poly span and dope finish, or any other epoxy, auto paint, whatever you would want to use on it. If you're covering with film, and this one's going to be covered with film, you actually have to, I use Ultra Coat, and you can see that this wing is already, I don't know if you can get a shot of that, Joe, it's real fine. There are a bunch of little holes at the top of the wing. I've already punched holes in it with this little gizmo, which is nothing more than a block of 1/2-inch balsa with a bunch of pins stuck in it. Because when you're covering with film, especially with Ultra Coat, you have to start in the middle, iron it down, and then iron it forward. And as you do, it'll trap bubbles in it. When you do this, which you just walk down the wing with it, bunch of holes in it, it can vent out the other side. The holes in the balsa do not affect the strength in any way, but having holes in the balsa makes it much easier to get the film to iron down and stay down. So that's the secret to a film job on a foam wing. Earlier, I mentioned having the tip riblets out here. This wing will have a flat balsa plate tip like so, with a block top and bottom, and the 16th sheet that comes down to it. Of course, all that's trimmed up and sanded. You can use a block if you want to. Some wings, like a twister wing, just stops with a flat plate on the end of it. I've mentioned this in the other foam wing video, but it's worth mentioning again. When you're working around foam, you don't want to use model airplane glues or CAs unless it's a foam compatible CA, which I had a bottle of it somewhere here. Yeah. This is the Bob Smith Super Gold, which is foam compatible, which I use for like touch-ups and here and there when I'm putting balsa on the foam and it doesn't quite adhere somewhere. I'll use this and tape it down until it goes off. There's a reason they call it gold, because $19 for a one ounce bottle of it. But there's not much else that can dry quickly and move on. You don't want to have to use more polyurethane and Gorilla Glue just for little patches. On the inboard wing, where the lead outs come out, you would need to take out a section of the foam here for your lead outs to slide if need be. On this airplane, the front lead out actually goes just in front of that foam spar, and the back lead out approximately in that position. See, I'm trying to think if there's anything else here that is worth mentioning. The rest of the control system uses wheel collars to hold the push rod into the nylon horns. I'll run some thin CA down inside this tube to adhere it to the wire. If anybody has any other questions about working with foam wings and control line aerobatics, or this is applicable to RC pattern wings and some other wings too, you can get in touch with me. My contact information is in the Brodak catalog. It's also in the vendor section of Sparky's Stunt Hangar. If you got any ideas or things you want to see me do that are similar to this, again, let me know. I'll be glad to do them, and try to get another video out there that's helpful to people. Good winds and tight lines. Thanks for watching.
Workshop, tools in hand, balsa wood, we make a stand, carving dreams from days gone by, stunt hangar planes that touch the sky, Control lines tight, the engine hums. Crafting artware, passion drums. Stunt hangar, flying high. Old world craft beneath